Hey guys, it's Karl. So this is the Sony Xperia 1 Mark IV. This, of course, is the successor to the Mark III, which was one of my favorites just because Sony comes out with the most interesting phones really suited towards not only content creators, but I think a real techie diehard in general. It's just got these really cool features that I think a lot of people appreciate. It does cost a ton of money, so this is coming in at $1,600, around $2,000 Canadian, which will be dropping later on in the year, around September. So this is a pre-production device. And I know that's super expensive, but the one feature where I think it could be justifiable for is the fact that you can now live stream from your phone using the sensor of a camera. So I've got the Sony A7 Mark IV here in this complete package. And usually when you live stream, you typically just go from your phone. And if you want to use a dedicated camera, you need to hook this up to a laptop. And when I've been at CES, MWC, that setup just isn't possible. And I've been looking to create something like this, and I'm super happy that we can now live stream. So for example, a YouTube live stream using this package. You'll need the Sony Xperia Mark IV, and I think Sony does this to keep it in the ecosystem. So either the Sony A7 IV or the latest ZV-1, because it has that new USB input that you can stream directly from your camera. So I've created this little rig, just of course with the camera. I just have this little hot shoe connector for a smartphone. So if you can just bear with me, we'll just slide that into place. And from there, it's pretty much plug and play. So when we go on over to YouTube, we will hit the little plus button. We will upload, go live actually. And right now you can see that the front-facing camera on the phone is the main camera that you typically use. And when we actually switch the cameras, you'll now see when I move this camera around, nothing is happening. And when we move the entire camera system, that's what the image will be. And you can see right now in that live stream preview, we're zooming in from that 24 to 105. You can see how messy my studio is. We're using the complete sensor from this camera to the actual live stream feed. And from this camera, you can also put an external microphone if you want. Whatever plugs into this, you can capture that audio. So for the first time, you don't need to have a dedicated computer. You don't need a laptop to use an actual mirrorless camera. And I'm not sure if there are other cameras that you can use. Obviously, Sony is keeping it within its ecosystem, and you can use the A7 IV as well as the new ZV-1 like I mentioned, and this should give you the best quality. So when I'm at CES next time, or when I'm actually just at my next live stream probably, this will be the setup that I'm going to try and go for. I actually did a live stream test on a YouTube burner account, and I was right away blown away by the quality. Like I said, you're getting the image quality from a full frame mirrorless, not from what's built into a mobile device, and I think that's super dope. I think anyone looking for a mobile live stream setup, this is what you need to get, and I think that's why this phone could be justified. On to the rest of the cameras, which is really what Xperia phones are known for. It's got a quad camera system, 12 megapixel main, 12 ultra wide, 12 telephoto, and a 0.3 depth sensor. But this is the world's first, I know, a common little acronym, that has an actual camera range that is optical. So between that sweet spot for telephotos, 85 to 125, we actually have mechanical parts moving in the optics of the lens to give you the best focal range with no judder, no sort of grain, because it's an actual optical sensor. Just like this camera over here, when you switch between 24 to 105, you have mechanics going, and none of that is digital. It's all optical, it's all built into the lens. The exact same thing is happening on this camera, obviously not 24 to 105, but in that spot for portrait lenses or portrait pictures, which in theory I think is pretty dope because optical zoom is obviously always better than digital. But to be honest, do we use that portrait range that much for, say, my daily driver, my 13 Pro Max? My telephoto lens is the least used of the bunch, and I would probably say 98% of my camera rolls are taken with the regular wide and ultra wide. I rarely use the telephoto. It's nice to have. I think it's a cool feature, but if we had that optical zoom range between the wide and ultra wide, I think that's where it would be a lot more practical and a lot better and you get a lot more use out of it. On the flip side, at least, if you're familiar or have shot in the Sony ecosystem at all, the app support for both video and photo is pretty much identical. So you can see you can switch between all of the different shooting modes and it gives you more control. And once again, you can change things like white balance, ISO, shutter speed, and it gives you a very native Sony camera experience. And also what the Xperia phones do really well for those pro users that actually like to use the phone as a main camera, they actually have a dedicated camera button up top to snap all of your photos. So that's kind of cool. It's just those little features that Sony packs in that really tailors it towards pro or I guess content creators. Another one, for example, is that fabled headphone jack, which has disappeared in every single new smartphone. The Mark IV still has it. Micro SD card slot, it's still got one, so I'm using this 1 terabyte one from Lexar, so big shout outs to them, especially if you're shooting in 4K, and this phone in all different modes can shoot in 4K at 120, and that's native. Obviously, this being a pre-production unit, some of the samples weren't as sharp as I wanted, but I'm sure Sony will fine-tune their software since it is still a couple months out. The rest of the phone is pretty much what you'd expect from any flagship Android device coming out this year, so Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 platform, 12 gigs of RAM. You can spec with either 256 or 512 gigs of storage. Honestly, get the lower one and throw a micro SD card in it. The display, which I know is another big talking point, which once again, I'm a big fan of and I think techies appreciate, 21:9 aspect ratio. So depending what you watch, I don't even shoot in that yet. But if you are watching some cinematic videos, perfect aspect ratio for that. Otherwise, you do get some black banding. I think it's awesome for browsing through social media, scrolling through Twitter. You just get so much more on the feed. It is 4K, 120 hertz, and it has a 240 hertz touch sampling, so great for gaming as well. It is rocking a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and the time that I've been testing it, especially doing live streams and some intense video work, I am still getting a day, so I typically just juice this up at the end. It is IP68 water and IP65 dust resistant. And the last kind of feature that I'm staring at, it does have front-facing speakers, and I find a lot of these features would be typically found on a phone that's maybe 4 years old that still, I think, people love. The only problem is though, am I willing to spend $1,600 for that extra feature set? I find that really hard to recommend to most people, and I don't think this phone is suited for everyone. I think someone that is eyeing this is already a content creator, is someone that's in the Sony ecosystem, someone that wants to pay for those extra features like live streaming. I think that's kind of a no-brainer for someone that does this for a living. You could fully justify the use of this phone. And it probably still is a bit of a hidden gem. Would I recommend it to most of you? Probably not, but then again, if you're watching this video, you're probably into tech, you're probably eyeing this anyways, so I think only you can answer that. Let me know what you think of this down below, and I'll catch the rest of you in one of my next vids. Peace.